And we are back. You are chatting with John P. Today, we are going to be talking about the pros and cons of different payment methods for watches. Now, whether it's a dealer or a private party, there are certainly some things to be said about some payment methods here. And also, I'll tell you about the different payment methods that I personally like to use when I'm shopping or when I was shopping as a collector, not necessarily currently with DelReyWatch.com. And before we get into that, I just want to say thanks for liking and subscribing and being here with me. It's really fun making these videos for you and engaging in the comments below, so you know what to do down there. And of course, I haven't made a video in a while, and things probably do look a little bit different because here at Delray Watch, we just moved offices. Federico's still putting things together outside as we speak. There's actually a window right here, so if things are a little bit off, please bear with us. We are working on it, and things are going to be improving greatly, and we've got this new, much greater, larger space so that we can improve things at DelReyWatch.com for you. On the wrist, I have, kind of a little bit dirty here today. I haven't worn it in a while, but my Omega Seamaster ceramic blue dial, ceramic bezel on rubber. I really love this thing. It's a great watch for the summer here in Miami. It's very hot and humid, so can't go wrong with one of these for sure. So jumping into the topic, guys, I've compiled a list of all the payment methods here. Now, whether you're shopping on Chrono24 or eBay or on the forums or private party or at dealers out there, I'll say that there's some methods here when you're buying a watch that offer you some really great positives, some protection methods. Now, on the other side, there are some of these scenarios that you can save a lot of money as well. So I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. And if this is something that you already know, bear with me to the next topic. But I do get a lot of questions about this, so I want to cover this for the more novice or newer collectors. Now, the first payment method that you can use is cash. Now, I think the saying goes like cash is king or something like that here in the United States. But I'll say that fewer and fewer dealers and private parties are willing to accept cash today. Now, the obvious plus to this, or pro, is that if you offer cash to someone, they're more likely to negotiate a little bit. You can save yourself credit card fees, and also cash is guaranteed. You know, you can approach either a private party, whether it's on Craigslist or something like that, or a jewelry store and say, hey, I'll pay cash. And there's some obvious ways that it's attractive for them. I'll say at Delray Watch, we don't accept cash because it has some downsides. If it's a large purchase, there's special forms, requirements, laws, regulations, and you have to check for the authenticity of the cash. So there's some considerations, but generally speaking, people like cash, and you can get an excellent negotiated price if you use the cash. Now, an obvious downside is if you do pay cash, if there's anything wrong with the watch that you purchased, you have very little recourse besides perhaps leaving a review or going after them legally over something you may have purchased. Whereas with some of these other methods, there's a lot of not only fraud protection, but just protection against defective goods. So another option that's a lot like cash and probably the most modern day equivalent to cash is a bank wire. Now, if you see a watch that you like, whether it's a guy on a forum or a trusted seller or even Chrono24, if you pay with a wire, you can also save yourself that roughly 3% credit card processing fees. The vendor can pass along the savings, and 3% on an expensive item, that's pretty attractive. I know when I was just a collector and not a dealer, I would oftentimes offer the wire because it shows to them that you're committed to the deal and also that you're willing to guarantee the funds. And in exchange, they pass along the savings. Now, along with the cash, a negative of that is you really have to trust the seller, because if anything is wrong, well, now you're involving a bank, and the banks don't really offer that type of protection with guaranteed funds. When you make a wire, you're telling the bank, hey, 100% I'm committed to this transaction, and these funds now should belong to this person. Well, to reverse a wire is often very difficult, very tricky, and sometimes not possible unless there is downright illegal activity. And if for whatever reason, something's not working, that's not illegal activity. So that's something to consider. But if you know, trust, and love that person, or they're your friend, or you've dealt with them before, offer the wire. You'll get the 3% discount. It's a great tactic, in my opinion. Now, This next one is probably the most common way to pay for anything in modern times. It's credit card or charge card. Now, if you pay with a credit card, very unlikely to get that much of a deal anywhere. And there's a few reasons. When you have a credit card, the vendor just has to go through extra hoops and jumps to get those funds. Now, if you're set up in the right way, they'll get the funds, no problem, but there's credit card processing fees, there's other considerations, whether there's a dispute, and there's a lot of work. And so for a vendor to negotiate, to them it may not be worth it. But that being said, if you're buying something on eBay or you're buying something on another auction site or you're on Chrono24, use the credit card. I do the same myself, regardless of what I'm buying. Even when I bought a car, I put the down payment on a credit card. I bought a car online. It just offers a lot of protection. With companies like American Express, they offer the consumer just so much protection, not only if something doesn't show up as described, but if something is missing or if there's fraud as well. So there's a lot of protection there. And if it's an unknown seller, you've never done business with them, try to use the credit card when possible if you don't have to have the best price, or if, for example, you can use the credit card, but they're still willing to negotiate, which is in the realm of possibilities, though not that likely. Now, this next one, I recommend pairing the credit card method with, if possible, because you have further protection. Now, this is PayPal. I think it's fair to say that most people are familiar with PayPal, though sometimes not always, just depending on your generation. But PayPal exists, and you can use PayPal to link other funding sources to pay and receive funds. It's almost like a bank, but not really. When PayPal was founded, that was the intent, was to create a modern bank, and they've kind of gone about and done somewhat of that. But if you pair the credit card with PayPal, not only do you get the protection of the credit card, but also PayPal has their own protection agency inside of the company. They have their own division that protects you against fraud and problems and dispute resolution. And when you're buying something on like the forums, dispute resolution at basically no cost to you is not a bad thing. For example, if you get into a dispute with a guy in the forum that said, hey, my watch was just serviced, and you bring it in and you're like, hey, the timekeeping is not keeping good and you don't want to keep the watch, well, you can involve PayPal in it, and to some degree, some extent, they will actually help you and try to determine what happened. Now, they're not watch dealers, they're not professionals at PayPal in terms of the watch industry, but they've dealt with enough problems and they do have pretty good processes. Before Delray Watch, I actually had purchased, I think it was like a Breitling or something along those lines, one of those types of brands, and there was a problem with it from a forum seller. Well, I just submitted the form on PayPal and there was a resolution process, and they were able to get us to come to a pretty good agreement that worked for both of us. Whereas if you didn't have that PayPal, it was just credit card or funds transferred. It kind of just turns into, there's no mediation, there's no arbitration or any kind of dispute resolution. So it could get nasty if you're not really willing to work with each other, if it's just a random guy on the internet. So PayPal's good with that. And once again, if you pair PayPal with that credit card, well, now you have so much protection, so much fraud protection, and you've got a lot of stops and a lot of areas of mitigation against those risks. So that's kind of a serious player, I think, when you're buying a watch from the internet. Now, there's a consideration with PayPal, and I never recommend using PayPal friends and family. If you go on the forums, Watch You Seek or the Rolex forums or the Omega forums, you'll see people in there that'll have a price where they'll say, save 3% if you use friends and family. Now, that is a recipe for disaster. When there's fraud or someone is doing something misleading on the forums, they'll use friends and family. Now, I'm not saying every time someone recommends friends and family, they're committing fraud, but if you wanted to commit fraud and you wanted to either not have a real watch or something along those lines, friends and family has no way to revert the transaction. We hear about people sometimes that will pay friends and family, someone on the internet, and there'll be a problem, and there's no way, there's no dispute resolution. You can't call PayPal and say, oh, I made a mistake, it was actually goods and services. There's nothing you can do. When you do friends and family, you're saying, this is my friend or my family, and I want to gift them money with absolutely nothing in return. And if you put something in the comments, it's only going to hurt you. So stay away from that. There's zero protection. There's other ways to pay someone, but really just, in my advice, in my opinion, and even when I was trading watches before Delray Watch on the forums, I would just pay the extra 3% for that safety, because you'll lose way more than 3% if there's a problem. Or let's say something gets lost in the mail, the person didn't insure it, because if you're dealing with someone on the forum, you can't trust that they totally know what they're doing. And then now you're out the watch, and then they have to go after insurance. Are they going to do that on your behalf? Who knows? You don't know the person on the forum. So pay the extra 3%. And I do know that PayPal has a good resolution process. Sure, it may not be 100% perfect, but it's certainly better than absolutely no protection for a few percent savings. And lastly, I want to talk about financing. Now, I'm not really an advocate of financing luxury goods unless perhaps maybe you have the funds on hand and you're just using it to cover the gaps or something along those lines. If you could pay it off with cash, no problem, or something from your bank account on the spot, sure, maybe take advantage of a 0% interest if you can control yourself. So I don't necessarily advocate financing, but if you are in the boat and you have no problem financing and it's something that you do, great. I'm not gonna judge you for it. But there is a company called Affirm. Now, Affirm is pretty much centered and revolves around luxury good financing. A lot of the big players will use them, and you can basically get pretty attractive pricing on payment terms for luxury watches. Now, it's an option out there. They also provide some dispute resolution, much like PayPal. And PayPal, by the way, also offers a 0% financing option for those of you out there. So it's another option to consider. If you look at their terms and what they offer, they do offer a little bit of protection. So maybe you might finance something for that added protection. But once again, the negative with the financing and some of these other programs that just require a vendor to put in a lot of work in terms of actually receiving the funds, very unlikely to get a huge steep discount. So wrapping that back full circle, and if you need the best discount, always recommend the wire when possible, because you will get the absolute rock bottom price when you speak in terms of that. But a lot of these other things or methods to pay for the watches offer such great protection. So it's all on a scale of how well you know the seller or the buyer, both back and forth. So if you know them very well and you've done tons of business, spring for the wire because you'll save the money. But if they're new out there on the forum, get into some of these like the PayPal. Don't do the friends and family, and just protect yourself, because with luxury goods, things can get a little bit dicey. So something to consider. So thanks for watching, guys. I wanted to just release this episode because it's been kind of the next topic on the list I've collected. Leave in the comments below the things you'd like to see in the future, and also the set, which we're working on. Let me know in the comments below things you'd like to see on the set. And we've taken down that Rolex clock. By the way, the battery didn't die. I've responded in the comments hundreds of times. The battery never died. It was just so loud. This microphone was picking it up. We're going to replace it with something cool. Whatever the winning vote is below in the comments, we're going to leave it. We're going to put it on the wall. Anything else you'd like to see, let me know. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Keeps me making videos for you. And Instagram, The Real John P. You have been chatting with John P. Ciao.